What's up everybody, my name is KSaun. Welcome back to the WDL. This is the second video of Season 4, and it will be the draft recap video for our 3 promotional leagues. Now, if you haven't already seen the first video that I put out, which was for the Champions League, I highly encourage you going to watch that first, as it will better explain our rules and our structure for this season. If you don't watch that, it might not be super clear, although I did put a summary of the rules on the screen right here. I'm not going to go through all of it, as I already have done that in a separate video, but just know that this video is for the 3 promotional leagues. There's one extra thing that I do want to mention for this season that I didn't mention in the first video. For the 3 promotional leagues, the top 2 players at the end of the season, the teams who make the championship, will get promoted to the Champions Division for Season 5. However, I didn't mention that the 10th, 11th, and 12th place teams in each division are eligible to be replaced by new players. The reason I'm doing this is to essentially create a system with the WDL that can kind of just keep moving fluidly season to season, so we don't have to expand the entire league to more players. 48 is already a ton, but this way, if any new blood wants to join, they may have an opportunity to do that in the next season. I say that because if you are watching this video and not playing in WDL Season 4, I highly encourage you to join our Discord channel, send me a message letting me know you're interested. We don't really have many people at all for the next season who would be interested, so get in line in case you want to participate in a following season. If we don't have enough interest in the next seasons, then those, bottom finishers will still retain their spot in the league next season. With all that being said, let's get into the video and check out the first division's team rosters. We're going to go in alphabetical order. It will be Heindler first, and then we will do Rundall, and then Wezette. I will put timestamps down below, so if you are looking for a specific division, you can check that out down on the bottom. But let's get into the Heindler team rosters. Alright guys, kicking off the Heindler division, we have the first overall pick, who is Dr. Dickhead. If you guys were around for Season 1 or Season 2, you may remember this guy. Very solid player, but he took off Season 3, was too busy in life, couldn't find the time to make it work, but he's back in Season 4, very happy to have him. His team is going to be the Knobgoblins. He is of the Guild Lapis, and as you can see, the Heindler League first pick. First of all, shouting out his roster here, obviously we need to look at the very tip top of his draft. Very clear strategy what he's going for. Season 2, he really tried to go into 2 high-cost dark units, and that worked fairly well with him. He's doing something somewhat similar this season with a 130 cost Bartz, 130 Addison Rae, and 120 Sephiroth. Obviously, his big powerhouse units, he's got 3 of them, and then he has stacked the rest of his team with low-cost units to play around them. This is an interesting strategy that we haven't really seen yet, at least in the Champions Division. We didn't see something exactly like this. Even some of the people who took those high-cost units still took some mid-tier costs. So Dr. Dickhead, I honestly kind of like this strategy with the costs, going with a couple of those high-cost units and just filtering your team, or littering your team rather, with a bunch of low-costers. Could be really interesting. The only thing I will say is that even though dark and light don't have true elemental counters, there's a good amount of dark and light resistance in the game, and your top 3 units are those 2 elements. If somebody's stacking a lot of light and dark resist, I do wonder if Dr. Dickhead will be able to put enough damage out on the other team. Realistically, the answer is probably yes. And if I had to go with one team specifically that I think is something you absolutely have to account for no matter what, it is Bartz, Curry, and Uni. We have seen Bartz just demolish people on follow-up attacks. Obviously, in this spot, it's very high risk, high reward, because you don't have anybody to soak hits. If the enemy team approaches you, you're going to be able to kill them. But if Bartz is able to follow up on both Curry and Uni attacks, it's going to be gross. You're able to stop, CT up and all that kind of stuff on the other team. You might be able to apply Frostbite, and then 2 rounds of follow-ups from Bartz. Not a lot of units live through that. So that is probably the #1 team I would shout out here. But I think he's got a number of really solid options. And I think the Slime, who was his first overall pick, is just a smart thing because he's just an ultra flexible unit, can use it in pretty much any team comp. If he's able to get Slime to heal up somebody like Sephiroth, who can be fairly bulky, pair that with like a Balo or something. Obviously not all the job synergy is there, but that could be a very tanky team as well. overall, really like the roster, and I absolutely love the Durando pick, as I am definitely an Axe lover for sure. Next team up to bat, we have Kyouma, and if you guys don't recognize this name, actually went by Koryu87 in Season 3, but that is the same player and the same team name. It is S.E.E.S, and they are from the guild Galleon currently. Heindler number 2 overall pick. Starting off the draft here, we've got a couple of really nice water units right up at the top. Glaciella Summer, Ferris, both 100 cost, so you obviously can't run them together. Thank God for the Heindler division, or else how do you beat that composition? I like the units themselves up at the top. The one thing I will shout out that I'm not sure how I feel, I actually do know how I feel. I don't love the fact that 4 of his top units are all the same element. That means sometimes it is really hard to get them to play together, especially for the fact that Tyrell is 30 cost. Tyrell is water. You can't run mono elements in this league. So if you want to run something like Summer, Glassy, and Miranda together, it has to be with Vadim. It's not going to be with Tyrell. So as much as I really love the units that he has up at the top, I am curious about how well they will pair together. I could easily see Ferris and Miranda working well together with the Vadim. If Murmur was still 40 cost, I think this team would be just turbo, like super good. But Murmur is 50 cost in this season, so it's going to be a little harder to make that work. That being said, I do like the fact that he has a couple of ice units at 70 cost that compare very well with either Miranda or Gernsback. I love that water and ice synergy there. Dark Odin and Dark Shiva working together just flawlessly. Those 2 cards are very, very strong. I do think ice and water in general are just as good as a mono element team, and they also kind of cover for each other, where water covers for ice. I like the Lucio. I think Lucio is a stud. I think he might even be a little undervalued this season. He was 90 cost last season, was still pretty decent, but he went down a little bit this season. Could we see a Red Mage team with Miranda, Lucio, and Orlando? I think that's actually a pretty decent team, all things considered. So honestly, I like the draft from Kyouma. The only thing I probably would have preferred to see is another unit that's at the top that's not water. I think that's really like the only thing here, but it's very clear what element that he wants to use, and I'm excited to see how he uses them. Third pick of this division is Catrah of Sandrock, and I'm sure you recognize that name. This is going to be his 3rd season of the WDL. He's gotten better from Season 2 to Season 3. Will he get even better from Season 3 to Season 4? Have to find out this season. So let's go with Reagan. Ice 100 cost unit, Red Mage. He doesn't have any other Red Mage units on the team, but I don't think that is the end of the world here, as he does have some Ice Water components that he can use, as such as Snow and Zazan. Zazan is now up to 40 costs instead of 30. There's not nearly as many 30s this season. However, Zazan also just kind of offers a lot. He has good damage, he has Steel Heart, insane mobility, which can often disrupt the enemy team. And Snow and Reagan are going to put the hurt out. Snow got his recent upgrade. I think it'd be a pretty good value at 80 cost. So I like that team a lot just to start right out of the gate here. Going with some other Fist units. The unfortunate thing here is Snow, Yrel, and Tifa cannot be all on the same team together. That would be 230 cost, just over the cost limit. But I do like the fact that he is using a lot of the same jobs between 4 glove users and 3 Fist users. I think there is definitely some stuff that he can work out there that's pretty good. I could see him using Revelka a lot, to be honest. I see him getting a lot of value out of her, just for the simple fact that she can fit with basically any 2 of Helena, Yrel, Snow, Renoa, Roy, or Tifa. Ravis is just an overall great unit, I think. Even at 60 costs, I think she's still value. Her AoE resist can just get through the roof. She has decent unit resist as well. And you can even pair her up with Summer Helena. If you're afraid of Earth teams, you have Tifa to kind of just pocket them and, fend off those Earth units that might be a threat to them. So overall, I think it's a really interesting team. He is very heavy into 2 weapon types, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So curious to see how it goes. I think my favorite team that he has is probably Reagan, Snow, and Zazan, but curious to see what he uses. 4th overall pick of this division is LucianRamz of Lone Shadows. Last season, Season 3, was his first in the WDL, so a 2-season now veteran, I guess if you want to call him that. Going with a couple of strong dark units. He's got Vivi at 120 cost. He very clearly has some synergies here. He can run with Livial and Elshra. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. Is rushing Vivi forward with quickens and haste and stuff like that a viable strategy? Just have him go in, nuke everybody, stun the entire team while Livial is doing damage from the back? It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, great Black Mage cards out there. There's a number of really good ones, including Vivi's card, which is just an S tier card in my opinion. In looking at some of the other units he is probably the biggest Shadowlings fan there is out there. And shout out to Shadowlings on Ice. So he actually drafted Shadowlings on Ice before we found out about any sort of upgrades for the global units. And at 70 cost, I think that could be actually a steal. She dropped all the way down to 70 because she just frankly wasn't that great of a unit. But with her upgrades, I think that's pretty good value. Shouting out a couple of more units here, Mashri Hornet and Varouche are both on the VV card, giving that 24% AoE resist, 50% magic. I do realistically think that card is so good that if you run that, you can just run the generic, either like Ramza or Black Rose Helena card in a slot, as well as Odin in another slot, and that's still a pretty good 3-card grouping, just because that one card offers so much. So I could see those two units being really flexible and being able to be used with Vivi very well if you pair them alongside Mia. I love the fact that he got a 30 cost unit. Makes this team a lot more flexible. And I do think out of the 4 30 cost units, I prefer Mia over 2 of them. I think Tyrell is number 1, Mia's number 2. That's just my opinion, but it'll be interesting. I would not be surprised at all to see an absolute ton of Shadowlings. This is this guy's favorite unit in the entire game. I'm curious to see if Lena gets any play. That's a unit that we don't see often, but only at 70 cost could get some value there. So it'll be interesting to see how he runs this. I like the team overall, and I'm glad that Lucian got both Shadowlingses on his team. It's just very, very him, and that's awesome to see. Pick number 5 here is Daewn of Inquisition. I believe last season was called Primordial Inquisition. Took the Primordial out. Maybe I'll get that name wrong at some point during the season. It's very possible. So he went with a couple of really nice high-cost units. And this is the first... Is it the first 140? No, we saw one other 140, I believe, up to this point. But we see Soul here. 140 cost unit. Man, this unit just terrifies me. I think I'm in the minority here, but I do think he might be the scariest 140. And that's just simply for the fact that he is so hard to get rid of. He's able to heal himself up really, really easily while doing a ton of damage. He's got a giant physical shield, so if you don't have barrier break, you better run magic or good luck. He's got Perrine, who is a stellar 100 cost unit, and he has what I think might be the best pick of the draft for people. I think we're going to look back at the end of the season and see that Lucio Halloween was the steal of the draft for all the divisions. He's only 90 cost in our format. That is an elevation from where he is in-game, which is 70 cost. But I think he is every bit worth it. Physical health shield, good damage. He gives himself haste. He's super evasive. I honestly think he's just an amazing unit. And he smartly grabs an ice unit in Winter Ravis and Surges to kind of scare off some of the wind threat that could be coming for Lucio. So I really like that. He's got a full axe team. Even if it is under cost, I still think that it could be pretty darn strong. Lucio Halloween, Summer Killface, Cyrell, full axe comp sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to see that in action. One more shout out to Ramada Winter, only 50 cost unit. If you guys don't know what she does, she got some absolutely stellar winter upgrades. Probably would have picked her myself if I had her on my roster, but her limit break gives her a 2-hit 100% damage shield. So if you know what Knight of Runestern or Cyrell or Lastwell's shield does, where it blocks all damage one time, well, her shield is 2 times. The difference is she puts a seal on the enemy so that they cannot break her barrier. So there's no getting around it. Unless you have a triple hit, the triple hit will take off the 2 hits and then the final hit will deal damage, but you can't just barrier break it. That included with the fact that her attack stat can get through the roof and has a stop chance. I honestly like this comp quite a bit, and I do love the fact that he grabbed 3 different 40 cost units that are all on the Edward Elric card that pair with Soul. I honestly think the more and more I look at this team, this is probably my favorite up to this point. I think he's got a few really nice options. The fact that he can run 2 of Etra, Lisette, or Surges with Soul, I think is really smart. Yeah, I don't know. I just really like this team overall. I like the Minwoo pick as well. She has Hate Down as a support, which is something that I value a lot, because if you don't have a true tank, which this team really doesn't have a true tank, a Hate Down support is very, very important because it allows them to stay in the back and do their job. So yeah, to Daewn, very, very well done. This is probably my favorite team so far. And speaking of favorites here, we have one of my favorite team sheets, I think, that I made here. Kansas City Killas, coached by King of Guild Overdose. He is obviously a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. Threw in Patrick Mahomes there as his mascot instead of one of his units. I think it turned out really cool. 6th pick of the Heindler division, or Heindler League rather, King Bradley. So sticking with the King theme, he is the highest unit and best unit on his team. 120 cost Earth unit, Sword Knight. Not a lot of Sword Knight synergy necessarily in terms of cards that can actually mesh here, but he can be ran with Mont Leonis, which I think is a very good combo. I think Mont is very, very good for a 50 cost unit. Between Mont and King Bradley, they both have ways to basically boost their own CT up, and I could see them lapping and chaining with themselves against the enemy team and just deleting somebody for sure. You could also have somebody like Shell in the back, basically just to haste or quicken them. You could have more as some extra damage, or maybe even throwing a Calamity Guard on the team. I could see that being very effective as well, giving essentially the whole team one-hit shields and nullifying status effects. I think that is a very scary comp. Looking at some of the other ones that he has going for him, though, he has a full staffed about team that he can run with multiple angles there. He's got Amnilus, Shell's Ovis, Helena Black Robe Witch, and Shell. So if he runs Shell with 2 of those other 2 units, they can all play together. And a massive shout out to Glaciella Wezette. Spear and Staff Devout have excellent chemistry. They're on the Edward Elric card, and they're also on the new Elda King of the Lions card, where your AoE resist, unit resist, and agility are all covered in 2 cards, as well as some other effects, and allows you to run pretty much whatever the hell you want in that 3rd card in the main slot, which can be really, really effective. I could see Glaciella, Shells, and or honestly any 2 of those higher units with Shell really putting in some work here. One thing I will shout out, I really like the Krace to go with King Bradley, because that is one of the cards that can pair well on the Melnia VC. However, it's gotta also be with more, otherwise it doesn't really work out. Barrett, Krace, and King Bradley are just a little too high of cost, so I don't think we will see that come out. If there's any one unit that I think sticks out to me as maybe not being related to the team, I like pretty much the whole roster. I'm not sure where Barrett falls into place or fits here. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see him. Maybe he can even use just an Icewater team undercosted with more Barrett and Glaciella. Would love to see it. Or Amnilus Barrett more for that matter. That honestly might be a pretty good team. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think he's got a very strong comp with a couple of really, really nice options. And I'm curious to see what he does in his rookie season. Pick number 7 is Snark, aka Snarky, aka Error 404. But we're going to call him Snark this season. He's of the guild Mako or Mako. Team name Arise from the Crashes. Last season was named Ashes to Crashes, playing on that same theme. Still has Heo, which is really, really cool to see. And let's break into this team, because there are a couple of things that I really, really like about it. For one, he's got a bunch of greatsword units on it, which is really, really cool. I think Rain is fantastic. I put a lot of work in him with him last season. Can get excellent AoE resistance. And his limit break upgrade also makes him a bit more tankier with regen, and honestly has some pretty decent damage on the limit break, especially if you were chaining with somebody like a fire slash unit like Heo. You could run those 2 together with Phoebe in the back as support. Obviously can't run with Marguerite because that's a full fire comp, but I could see that team putting in some work. Black Mage is on a couple of cards with Greatsword, the Heo Vision card, all 3 of them on there, and the new MR Raid VC actually has all 3 on that card as well. So I think it's got some pretty decent synergy there. Shouting out Esther as well, a late round pick that he got, obviously with some new upgrades. I think she is absolutely stellar versus physical units. She drops like nothing to Magic, but she doesn't have to come out versus Magic teams. So I like a lot of the options here. Gargus, I think, is great value at 70 cost alongside Skahal and Marguerite. Oh my goodness, full Black Mage composition. Quickening Skahal and Gargus sounds terrifying to deal with. And he's also got a couple of spear units that can work really well together. Dialdo and Winter Luartha with Marguerite in the back. He's got a lot of really good options here. He's got multiple magic tanks. He doesn't have a physical tank, I would say. I mean, Dialdo's just really bulky. He can kind of be a tank regardless. But he's got Dialdo, Rain, and Charlotte. They're all kind of skewed magic tanks. I say that Esther's so good versus physical. She can basically, just tank for herself. But I think he's got some cool options. It'll be interesting. I think his team is better this season than it was last season. I think he upgraded in terms of how he drafted. I don't remember how exactly he finished. I wanted to say he was somewhere around like 8th in his division. But if I had to guess over or under, I'm going to say that he performs over that this season. I think the roster's pretty good, and looking forward to seeing how he uses it. Next up to bat is Maughanman of the guild Venom Overdose, a sister guild of Overdose, who we've seen, I think, 1 or 2 players already from. Coach of Dirty Slushie, and he's got Elda, King of the Lions, as the mascot unit here. Melnia, Mashari, Queen of Horn. 3 really, really nice options at those upper costs for his team. Elda, King of the Lions, just trying to see synergy like right away where he can play with it. He can easily play with Blade and Nasha. That team might be hard to remove. Blade is a very good 50 cost support. Nasha can be a pretty decent tank. And Elda, obviously, is a fairly bulky unit at 120 cost. I'm not sure who else he would ever run here. He could run Ryryu if he doesn't want to run either Blade or Nasha. I could see him doing that maybe once in a while, but I think the most likely outfit that he's going to have there is Blade, Nasha, and Elda together. The one thing I will say, I do wish he would have somehow been able to snag a 30 cost just so we could see Melnia and Queen Mashari together, but I don't think that's the end of the world. One comp that I like a ton that he has on his roster, Melnia, S.E.E.S, and Ryryu together, double gunner with S.E.E.S as a magic tank to soak up any sort of magic attacks that would go for them. They're all on that Melnia card, so agility and unit attack resist already taken care of there. I think that could work out quite well for them. Looking at Noctis, a unit that we haven't seen since I think season 1 of the WDL, so really cool to see him back in action because we never really see play from him. Obviously just got some recent upgrades, and you can make a full Sword Knight team with S.E.E.S, Noctis, Nasha. I do think that's a little low on damage, so maybe he won't go that route, but I think the number 1 team that I definitely expect to see at some point is running S.E.E.S, Dia, and Lastwell. I've said it many times, but the ice-water connection is just so damn good. Dark Shiva, Dark Odin, and then you run maybe the Winter Holiday Party as the 3rd card. That can work very, very well. And I like the team overall. He's got a ton of Cold Triangle. Basically, his entire team is either Earth, Water, or Ice. The only unit outside of that is Ryryu. And I love when you do this because the enemy team doesn't know which one you're going to play, like which 2 you're going to play probably. You could theoretically play all 3, but it's really hard to guess which one you're going to run and elementally counter you when you have something that counters that element. So overall, for his first ever draft, I think he did a really solid job, and I expect him to be very competitive this season. The next pick I am really excited to go over is OdaibaDiver. If you guys don't know who Odaiba is, where have you been? Are you living under a rock? I mean, this guy is such a pillar of the community. He's an excellent player. Was fighting in top guilds for a long time in both Global and JP. He does excellent translation streams from when we get any sort of stream from JP. He translates that for everybody, often posts it to Reddit with the translation. He's just incredibly helpful for the community, and I am beyond excited to have him in the WDL for this season. So very, very excited to have Odaiba here. But of course, his team name is Odaiba Diving School. His guild is Final Boss at the moment, and he is rocking that Helena the Black Rose. 140 cost in our format. That is the highest a unit can be. That being said, he's got a very interesting team paired along with Severo and Mish. So he has a full Black Mage comp that can run with her. My goodness, that is a lot of damage coming out from those 3 units. No tanks, but who freaking needs them? You've got 3 badass damage dealers that can deal a lot of damage. They can break barriers. Severo can drop bravery to make them tankier versus physical damage. That team, I think, is pretty scary. He does technically have Y'shtola also if you want to run them, but I gotta be completely honest, I don't know when you're going to run Y'shtola over those 2 units with Helena. I just don't see when that will happen. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Maybe he's got something cooking for Y'shtola. I think Mish and Severo are just straight up better, and I think he'll very likely run those 3 together when he runs that comp. Shouting out Glaciella, Flagbearer of Reform, another excellent unit. Went up to 120 cost in our league this season, but I think she's very well worth it. Her unit or AoE resist can get pretty staggering in the proper comp. She can just be so ridiculously bulky. She has a really good chaining courage removal skill in that cross shape. She's just an excellent unit. Every season she's been available, she's been strong, and I expect nothing less out of her this season, especially paired up with a couple of units like either 9S, Camilo, or Helena. Honestly, that synergy is all really good. I've said before, the Spear and Devout synergy are very, very good together. The Edward Elric card and the Elda card cover basically everything you want. 9S, I think, is a steal at 50 costs. He's just got some, or he's about to get some upgrades in the global or worldwide version from the near collab that's going to come around the corner here. I don't know, man. Odaiba's got some really scary stuff. He has never done a draft league like this before. Shouting out another comp, Elia, Rundall, Rugia, and Titus. The more and more I look at this team, he's got... I don't know how much he's going to mix and match stuff. If I had to guess, I think he's basically going to have 3 teams that he runs, and they're all really strong. I think he's got the full Magic Black Mage comp. He's got Elia, Rugia, Titus all together, who all have really good synergy in terms of cards and a lot of missile damage. Or he's going to run the Spear comp with maybe Helena mixed in there. Either way, all 3 of those teams are very scary and very good. And I'm knowing how good of a player Odaiba is, it would not surprise me at all to see him in the top 2 or 3 teams this season. I think he will do very, very well this season. And this probably is fighting for my favorite roster to this point. I said Dawn was probably my favorite to this point, but I think this is right up there as well. So shout out to Odaiba for not only being awesome for the community, but apparently awesome at drafting. So well done by him, and I'm really excited to see how he does this season. Pick number 10 of the Heindler division is Impaler. And I'm curious to see if the name Impaler is because of the Katana team that he's going to run, or the name Three-Legged Pants. I'm not entirely sure, but let's take a look at this roster. So Edward Elric is his number 1 unit on his roster. I think Edward is an absolutely stellar unit. However, I will say one thing. I'm not sure if the cohesion with other units is fully there on this roster. One thing I would love to have seen is either one of those bottom units, Mariluke, Lorenzo, something like that. If they had been a 40 coster, I would have liked to see that because it could have paired alongside Oberon and all been on that Edward Elric card. He obviously can still do that with Mariluke, Lorenzo, Edward. I think that's still a perfectly viable team and is still fairly decent, I would say. But I think it could have been even better if he was able to throw in Oberon with maybe something like Wezette or Sosha or Surges instead of Mariluke. I would have liked to have seen that, but regardless, I do think he has some really nice other synergies on his team that are very strong. The Katana comp that I mentioned, Astrius Raychez alongside Rob Horn is really exciting, really cool to see. The Katana also is on the same AoE resist cards. There's 2 different ones, I believe, with Black Mage. Both the Sephiroth card, if you want to wear it on a physical unit, or the Vivi card, if you want to wear it on a magic unit, can pair really nicely there. So on that regard, I do really like the kind of meshing that he did on his team. Velis as well, I believe, is on one of those AoE resist cards. I believe the Vivi card as well. So if he wanted to run something like Velis, Raychez, Sakura, just making a speedy Raychez, Sakura, hopefully doing a lot of damage. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see. I think the only thing, like I said, that stands out to me is how is Edward going to be used? I think it's most likely with Mariluke, Lorenzo. Does that team do enough for you? We'll have to see, but the other units on the roster I think mesh very, very well together. And I'll give a huge shout out to Oberon Heindler, who just got a massive limit break upgrade. Went from a cross shape to a diamond, still has that elemental resist debuff, which stacks on other elemental resist debuffs. It's a very good skill and can be very good in rainbow compositions. Also gives him haste now and some extra HP when he's low on health, so it's a very good upgrade overall. And Astrius, Raychez, and Rob Horn still have me here. I would love to see that comp. I think it'd be really, really cool to see. Got multiple Keenblade potential users in that comp, tons of slash damage. And anytime you see a job team with a weapon type that you don't always see, I think it's just cool as hell. So I'd love to see Impaler's Katana team, and with Raychez in the middle, I think I can expect to see that at some point. The 11th pick of this draft is going to be Sixeight of the guild Get Swifty. Yes, we have another Get Swifty member joining us with the guild name Zasshu. I don't know what that means. Hopefully nothing dirty, but I don't know. I will shout out right away. Aloha the Alabaster is a unit that I think everybody is terrified of. She is in the middle. She is his home screen unit. However, she is the mascot unit basically just to troll, I think. Unfortunately for Sixeight, he did not draft 2 units that can fit cost-wise with Aloha. So even though Aloha is on his roster, he physically cannot play her. So this obviously puts Sixeight at a disadvantage. He had 750 points to work with. It's basically as if he's working with 610 points. So if he does well this season, massive friggin' shout out to him for doing that, because he's working with less cards overall in the deck than somebody else is. So I just wanted to point that out. As scary as this Aloha is right here, if you're facing him, he can't actually play her. And he is very well aware of that. He knows that. He even told me. So it's not like this was something that caught him off guard. I think he had planned on taking more lower cost units and didn't do it until the end and kind of put himself in a weird position. So that being said, let's look at the other things that he does have and how he can make them work for him, right? So Mustadio at 40 cost, at least he does have one low cost unit, so you can pair something like a Sottily and Miranda together on that VV card. That is like one of the positives for sure. Naya, alongside her husband Shutzel, like seeing both of those units on the same team. Whether or not they will play together, well, curious to see. I gotta be honest, man, it's tough. This roster is going to be tough to make work compared to other rosters. With 140 of your points just straight up missing, it's going to be tricky. He has multiple tanks, a physical one and a magic one, and a support, or 2 supports rather, Naya and Galzak. I wonder if he's going to have enough damage coming from other places. Every win he gets, I think he's going to be hard earned, and I'm going to give him massive credit for every win that he gets. I'm going to be rooting for him because he's kind of, like I said, at a disadvantage. But there's just not... I always have a hard time insulting people's teams, and this season I'm trying to point out flaws that are there alongside the positives. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be really tricky to make this work, I think. I expect to see a lot of Shutzel probably alongside one of the 70 costers in Sottily. That's my guess. I think that's the most likely scenario of what we see. I think we see Sottily alongside like Engelbert Shutzel. You have a tank, you have a physical DPS, and a magic DPS / kind of support there. We'll see, man. Best of luck. I really hope you can pull off some wins. I'm sorry for, the fact that you missed out on the extra low-cost unit and can't make Aloha work, but hope you do well, and like I said, I'll be rooting for you. Last pick of the Heindler division is going to be Xeno, another Thunder Gods player joining the WDL Season 4, which is really exciting. Team name Polarity. A couple of units that I absolutely just love about this team right out of the gate. And in fact, with a new upgrade, now there's 3 units. Winter Wrath. She just is so ridiculously good versus magic damage. Her one buff just mitigates so much from the enemy team if they want to bring that kind of damage type. And then right alongside her, 90 costs in our format, Jaden is celebrated with a 10,000 physical health shield, and Ibarra now gets a 7,500 physical health shield. So you have multiple units with giant physical health shields and one who basically shuts down magic. So if you are trying a full magic versus full physical comp versus Xeno, you better guess right, because it might be really tricky to overcome that if you guess wrong. I do love the fact that he has Jaden celebrated Chunak and McLeod, or even Ildira instead of Chunak. I love the Ice Spear synergy, and anything with Ice Water together I think can be very, very strong. Frederica Halloween with Chunak is an excellent evasion team. You can also just pair them with Little Leela to try and shut down any sort of magic damage that can be on the other side. Obviously, Little Leela's not going to be that evasive, even with evasive cards, but Sword Warrior Group is on that new Halloween Lucio VC. Both Chunak and Frederica Halloween have ways to avoid guaranteed hits. I just think Xeno did an honestly amazing job with this draft the more and more I look at it. He's got an excellent low-cost support with Kadia, and facing him, it's, okay, is he bringing magic? or is he bringing magic shields? Is he bringing physical shields? Is he bringing evasion with ignoring sure hit? I don't know, man. There's just a lot to prepare for here, and it's really anybody's guess what he's going to bring. I don't think I'm being biased here because he's in my guild. This would probably be, if I had a top tier in this division, I said Daewn, Odaiba, and I think this would be my third one. I think there's a number of really good rosters, but if I had to guess in terms of who has the best rosters, I think it's these three. I didn't even shout out the fact that he has a full Mace comp, that Mace just has excellent cards on it. Winter Wrath, Ildira, and Kadia together I could see putting in some work. Just a lot to like about this draft, so way to cap it off. Obviously, he's on the bookend, which sometimes can be an advantage, but for this being his first draft, I think he did really, really well, and I sure as heck would not want to face him. So, guys, that wraps up the Heindler division. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. We've got 2 more divisions to get into, so let's jump into the Rundall division. Kicking off our second division of this video, the Rundall division, we have none other than Unhindered, a 4-time now WDL player, has been with us ever since season 1, so very cool to see. Last season was his best season, and I think he wants to try and improve even on that as well. But with the first overall pick, he took Elda, King of the Lions, and I can't blame him, honestly. I think he's a fantastic unit. Even at 120 costs in our format, I think he can do a lot of things. And I think he did a nice job pairing a couple of different team comps that can work well with him. Obviously, that Ice Water synergy with the Dark Shiva and Dark Odin cards. He can pair up something like McLeod and Agrius, or he can even throw in Shell or Tyrell into that mix. Honestly, take your pick of 2 of those and he can make them work. So there's a Time Mage, there's a tank, a couple of DPS options, some really good stuff for Elda to be able to pair with. So I like that overall. And honestly, the Spear and Staff Devout synergy that I've talked about before is very, very good as well. So not only does the Ice Water part work for Elda, McLeod, and Shell, but they also are on some of those job cards together. So he is going to get the absolute maximum value out of those cards if he pairs those 3 units together. Looking at some of his other options, if he needs to ever get some missile damage out, obviously he can do Alaya Rundall, is very, very strong. Luwartha has been a very lackluster UR unit up to this point, and that is why she's all the way down to 50. So it reaches a certain point where you say, she might actually be some really good value, even though I don't think she's the greatest unit in the world. At 50, now those things kind of change. So having a couple of nice long-range units could be very nice for him. And obviously he has a couple of huge magic threats with some glove users in both Kefka and More the Merrier. Can pair him up with either a Quickener and Shell, a tank and Agrius, something like that, or even just some extra missile damage in the back with Luwartha. I think he's got a number of really solid comps. I think he's done a little better every single season in terms of his draft, including this one. I think this is his best team yet, so I think he's going to do pretty well. I think he's got a good shot to do well in this division, and I'm excited for him. So very, very cool way to start off this division. With the second pick of the Rundall division, we have AllSmokedUp of the guild Get Swifty, aka Get Smoked, coach of My Character Romance. Obviously a play on the My Chemical Romance band, so very, very well played by him. Couple of 100 cost units who are very solid on his roster here. We've got Stern Wing of Destiny, Edward Elric, 2 very different damage types, even if they're both physical damage. I like that a lot. Edward obviously bringing Crucial Dispel and Barrier Break in his kit. Stern bringing some very nice large damage, chaining, re-raise, as well as haste on his limit break. So 2 units who do very different things. I do appreciate that with these 200 cost units, they kind of fill different niches, so I like that a lot. He's obviously got some Dark Odin synergy going on with Stern Wing of Destiny, Elserel, and Venera. Venera all the way down to 50 costs this season. Curious to see if we can see if some Venera popping off. Would be very cool to see, as long as it's not against me. The Stern Wing of Destiny can actually be somewhat evasive with the Sword Knight role there, just because of the Halloween Lucio card. And you know who else can be evasive is Ravis. Even though she's an MR tank, she can actually be evasive. She's always had that part in her kit in the game. The problem is that lightning cards have never been there to support her. They've never had luck or evasion cards on lightning cards. Well, say no more, because now the Halloween Lucille card with 42% luck is there to help her. So I honestly think he could get some pretty good value out of those 2 units together. Pair them up with someone else who is maybe evasive, wouldn't be on the card, But something like Venera, maybe you just want Curry to drop Frostbite from the back, Several to drop Bravery. He's got so many different low-cost options who bring something different to the table. And he has 2 units who can quicken. So anytime you have that, that can be kind of scary. I know it's sometimes harder to pull off. I say 2 units, I'm sorry. He has 3 units that can quicken. Gilgamesh, Helena, and Hope can all do it. So I would not be surprised to see AllSmokedUp pull out some time-made shenanigans this season, and I think it could be really cool. The one thing I will shout out as well, Hope is 50 cost. Now, I think he's, when you're talking about just specifically the unit, I think he's actually better than 50 cost value. The problem with Hope is that in our format, you can't run mono element, which means you can't run him on a full light team, and he's not on any job card. So kind of in the opposite regard of why Slime gets extra value from being able to basically be on any card you would ever want him to be on, Hope can only be on the light cards, which means they're not going to benefit your entire team. However, I love the fact that if you're going to draft Hope, you get somebody who is a very strong light unit like Stern Wing of Destiny to pair alongside it. So it's a very interesting team. He went with a different strategy than a lot of people did. He stacked the hell out of low-cost units, and he is the only person in the entire WDL across all 4 divisions who ended up with 12 units on his roster. And that is something to be said about, you know, why you do so many low-cost options. More flexibility, less predictability from the opponent, obviously, and just gives you more units overall. So some pretty cool stuff here. Curious to see what he busts out. I think, honestly, the strength of his comp is that you look at it and you really don't know what the hell he's going to bring. I think in most weeks, there's a good chance either Edward or Stern comes, but aside from that, I really have no clue. And I think that can be a real positive because it doesn't allow the other person to, you know, skew their team towards one unit. So, cool team by AllSmokedUp. I'm excited to see how he does. Third pick of the Rundall division is Mr. Aloha, now of the guild Howl, has switched guilds here. And does he upgrade from being in the guild Howl? The only other players we have from this guild up to this point in other seasons have done very well. We've had one of them in the championship the last 2 seasons. Can Mr. Aloha, you know, replicate that and do well in Rundall? We'll have to see. Obviously, very clear Full Metal Alchemist fan. Got this own custom art here from Roy Mustang, so put this in for the mascot instead of the Woda picture. I think it does look really cool, really clean here. King Bradley, obviously, and Roy Mustang, both from FMA, so I think you can see where his heart is at. Mr. Aloha has a Roy tattoo on his hand, so I'm very excited that he got him on his roster and is able to use him. So, that being said here, King Bradley is obviously an absolute monster, but you've got to think, okay, what can you pair him with? Mr. Aloha's done an excellent job in finding units that can go with him. He has Nasha, Howlet, and Lilith, all on the Sword Knight job group, which means with those Sword Knight cards, which honestly there are some pretty good ones. The Melnia card, if you want that in your main slot. Otherwise, if you'd rather be more evasive, with Bradley, you can have the Halloween Lucio card in the main slot. They have some good stuff. They don't have an AoE resist card, I believe, but you can get around that because of some of the other nice cards that they have, including, you know, extra damage cards. One of the Full Metal Alchemist cards gets 50% extra attack along with crit and crit damage. So you can kind of afford to run just like a generic AoE resist card. But the full Sword Knight group is great. And honestly, just having Lorenzo as well as another Earth threat alongside King Bradley, I think is really cool. Nasha being ice scares off Earth. So honestly, King Bradley last season for 110 cost didn't perform nearly as well as Sephiroth did, but I don't know if that's an indicator of how strong he is. I think he can be a very strong unit, and Mr. Law has done an excellent job building around him. Another thing that he's done really, really well here, could be scary if he does this right. Raph and Summer Ketone, those 2 units are going to be very, very bulky on a Mace job team. He can pair alongside something like Slime to keep Raph fully healed. Slime's heal doesn't care how much HP you start with, so it's not like if Raph has 15,000 HP, he won't heal her to full. He will. If you have the right healing trust stones on and no healing power down, that 15,000 HP Raph could be more like a 30,000 HP Raph, not even talking about a re-raise or something like that. So I think that is an interesting composition that I'm curious to see. and a couple of glove units. Obviously, that Roy Mustang, who he's, showcasing here in the middle, can also pair alongside Zoma and Ravelka. That is a 210 cost team. But honestly, I really like what he did. Very similar to AllSmokedUp, has a ton of low-cost options. He's got 6 different 50 costers. Overall, I think he did an excellent job. I think this is probably the strongest team that he's drafted to this point. And yeah, wish him luck. The 4th overall pick of the Rundall division belongs to King Delita, and he is following suit with a different picture in the middle for his mascot, and that is somebody, I believe, from Final Fantasy XIV, dropping Flare on somebody, hence the team name Fanatical Flares. Many units on his team can use Flare, and I think that is one of the reasons that he based his team name off of that. So obviously, 2 huge units to shout out right out from the gate. Helena the Black Rose, obviously 140 in our format, but man, is she terrifying. It almost doesn't matter who you are. She's going to deal a lot of damage to you regardless. So whenever you have one of these 140 cost units, you got to look and say, okay, well, who can you actually pair her up with? No matter what, Y'shtola is going to be part of that group. I will say, I do think Y'shtola is a little lacking, but you have Helena to kind of compensate for that, and at least on one hand they are on the same job cards along with somebody like Salir or Mediana. I honestly think Salir and Mediana are both just powerhouses in terms of damage. I think they're both a little slept on. I mean, if Mediana just walks forward and limit breaks the team one time and then dies, like, she kind of did her job. That Limit Break is essentially a Thundaga Disposer from Skahal, which I think we are all very familiar with in terms of how much damage it can do. So yeah, it can be very good. And she also has a nice Spirit debuff along with Healing Power down on her Blizzara Anarchist ability. So some really cool combos that he can do down there. Rob Horn, I've mentioned this before, Katana and Black Mage have a couple of different cards that they can sync up well together. So if you wanted to run Y'shtola, Helena, and Rob can Keen Blade, getting the team to move forward a little quicker. I think that could be very useful. And if you want, you can have somebody healing from the back, or you have a Time Mage from the back. This is, I thought this was going to be not so common, but this is like the 3rd team in a row here where we've seen draft tons of 50 cost units. King Delita has 6 of them. So you can see that he's putting his eggs very much in the basket of Helena and Sephiroth. These 2 80 cost units, neither one of them can play with either Helena or Sephiroth no matter what. So I think the reason that he took Dagger and Oberon are obviously to play together. I don't know why else you would take 2 80s in this format. So I think Dagger and Oberon being a couple of Earth units. And I think 1 or 2 of the cards between Mace and Spear do overlap, so he's got that going for him as well. Ultimately, this season is going to come down to how much can Helena and Sephiroth carry, I think, from their respective costs. But with Sephiroth, obviously being 120, you can pair him up with 2 different 50 costers. You don't have to rely on Y'shtola, so I think it'll be interesting. He's very much putting his eggs in 2 units baskets, but if you were going to pick 2 units to put those eggs into, I don't know if I said that right. I think he picked 2 good units to do it for. So similar to one of the other teams in the Heindler division, I think if you can stack up a lot of dark and light resistance against this team, it could be fairly effective. I say that a little skeptically, though, because both of these units can absolutely hit like a truck. The 5th pick of the draft is another brand new player to the WDL, but certainly not a brand new player to Wotiv, as he has been around for a long time, used to be the guild leader of Visipur. This dude is as good as it gets when it comes to just having a mind for the game and being a good player. It is none other than Quistis, currently in the guild Cinnamon right now, and coach of Cosplay Party. So if you guys don't know who this guy is, he is elite. He is an absolutely stellar player. Well, let's see how he did in terms of drafting, as this is his first time doing it. So started off his draft with Lucille Halloween. Absolutely amazing unit. I've said this already in the Heindler division. I think he might be the pick that's worth the number 1 overall pick amongst the divisions. I think he just brings so much value. You have to be accurate to hit this guy. He has a huge physical barrier, tons of damage, just so much going for him. Yeah, he's just hard to stop. And the one thing I like that Quistis did here is that he paired him alongside Sorrow, and also paired him alongside Titus. Now, the reason that I say that is all 3 of those are on the Halloween Lucio card. Obviously, Lucio and Sorrow can both be evasive. Titus, I don't think, is probably going to get evasive even with that card, but he still gets the agility from it, which can be very, very useful. if you're using those two cards or two units together, you could always still have somebody like Livial in the back trying to drop poison bombs on their head, or Katia in the back trying to heal either one up to full. I think either one of those comps can be pretty effective. Another comp that I think is really great is he has a full staff Devout comp. He has Renan, Golbez, and Resnick that he can pair all together. Obviously, full job card synergy going on there. Renan and Golbez are both essentially like bulky mages. That's not a very common like type of unit in the game, but they are both kind of bulky mages. So having those two together with a hate down support like Resnick in the back, I think could be pretty effective. Renan especially, you're not always going to two-shot this unit, so if he could take 2 hits, get healed back to full with Resnick and deal damage, I think that could be scary. And then obviously the one right in the middle of the screen that you gotta shout out, somebody you're always gonna have to be prepared for, might have to use that Minwu TMR to negate any sort of stuns that could come out from him, is obviously Vivi. Vivi can pair well very nicely with Livial, another black mage here, and then you can either have a heal support with Katia, but I think the more likely scenario is you run him with Titus as a tank for, you know, kind of drawing some of the aggro away. So I could see Titus with 2 black mage damage dealers being effective as well. The one thing I didn't shout out too, I said Pissarro as the evasion angle with Lucio, obviously has that with Frederica Halloween as well. So multiple different evasion angles that he can run here. Overall, I think he did a nice job drafting. I don't think this is like an absolutely bonkers, insane good team, but I think it is very, very solid. And I do think that if I had to guess, like, who the best pilot is in the division, it's Quistis. And I don't think that's much of a controversy. So even if this is, let's say, the 3rd or 4th best roster, if I have to make a guess and go out on a limb, I think he would be the most likely to finish in 1st in our division regardless. So I think he did a really nice job, and I'm excited to see how he does in his rookie season. Next team up is the 6th pick overall, and it is my team, the Los Angeles Ramzas. I am obviously of the Guild Thunder Gods. If you've already watched the Champions Division video, I've already gone over my team, but I did correct the graphic now. So Orin is no longer a win unit if you've seen that video. So just to talk a little bit about my team, what my thought process was, and how I think it goes here. My first overall pick was Grifford. I do think he's a very solid unit. 70 cost in game, but I do think he outperforms that 70 tag, which is why I was comfortable getting him at 80. I knew I wanted to grab Vega. My Vega is max reincarnated, one of the only units that I have maxed in War of the Visions, at least for UR units anyway. So I knew I wanted to grab that as a value pick for me just because I've invested so much into the unit. I personally love him. I think he's really flexible in terms of his buff rotation, how you can start the fight. You can either start off with his re-raise, you can start off with courage, you can do a 70% 3-hit physical barrier, or you can turn on his reaction ability, make it 80% and try and self-heal off of other people. So he can do a bunch of different things to start off the fight. He is on multiple cards that can make him dodgy, so you can either just amp up his HP like crazy, you can build him somewhat evasive. He has his Berserk. I just really like him overall as a unit, and I obviously have a full Axe team that I can run with Grifford and Durando. This season, I made a real point to try and do a cold triangle setup on my team alongside the Lightning. I didn't want to force myself into drafting Wind to cover for my Lightning. I knew I wanted Lightning units because I've always been a Lightning player, but I really feel like Cold Triangle is better than Warm Triangle in general. So by doing this, I felt like with the Water and Ice cards really pairing well together, and obviously Dark Golem being solid as well, having S.E.E.S, Grifford, Winter Rabbies, Dia, and then Oron, Yrel, I think it gives me a nice Cold Triangle setup that I feel really good about. I like the Winter Rabbies pick a lot. I think her upgrades are really good. Having her Limit Break now be a Diamond AoE that is 6 range, that is a very respectful amount of range. Can land Frostbite on multiple people, and not only does it deliver Frostbite, but it removes 20 AP from those units too. So realistically, it's more like an immediate taking 40 AP from the person as long as the Frostbite lands, and then if the fight keeps going, they can't get it back over the next couple turns. So there are multiple, ways in a fight that she can basically just shut somebody down, especially if they don't have something like re-raise to bring them back and get rid of the Frostbite. They can just often be out of AP for the rest of the fight, so I'm really happy with that pick. And a couple other ones I just wanted to shout out. Obviously had to get my boy Shutzelt. I think there's the world of him. He's one of my favorite units in the game. He's got great penetration levels. He's got an awesome courage re-heal back ability. I wanted to get 9S. This was another unit that I liked when Nier came out. I used him a little bit, but I haven't had the opportunity to use him in a long time because he hasn't been that great. But I do think his new upgrades are really, really respectable. And Lemure is a unit who I'm excited to use, as I've never really used this unit before. I love the ability to give haste to the entire party right out of the gate, and with her 140 upgrade, when somebody has haste from her delivering it, she gets hate down. And I've said before, I value it very, very highly to have hate down on your support. It makes it more easy to run them with people who don't necessarily have hate. So if I want to run it with a Grifford and Winter Ravies, or a Vega and Shutzelt, something like that, I don't need hate on those other units. She's just going to sit in the back and survive with her AoE resist. So overall, I'm excited about the team. I think I did a decent job drafting. I think if I have a downfall, it is too much slash damage, but ultimately I couldn't resist having an axe team and a greatsword team. It's just in my heart. Even if I know that it's not the smartest way to play, I like it too much, and I had to have them. So I'm excited for the Los Angeles Ramzas this season. More excited about them than I was about how the Los Angeles Rams lost in the playoffs, but it is what it is. We're going to see how we can do this season and hopefully make the playoffs. Next pick, we have Proto, another Thunder Gods player here of the team Sucker Punch. And I think he did a very, very nice job drafting here. So I believe his first pick, if I remember correctly, was Velis. I'm not 100% sure about that, but he paired up Velis very nicely with some other units here. So obviously Glaciella was at Amnelis, Jaden the Celebrated, and Summer Elsie, even Raphael and Valade. He's got so many ice-water combinations. I've said it many times, and I will say it till I'm blue in the face. Ice-water is just the best two-element combination you can do right now, in my opinion. I don't think it's particularly close. I think their cards as a two-element combo are just ridiculously good. I think they're basically on the level of a lot of job teams, and I think a lot of them. Another combination that I like a whole lot, Jaden the Celebrated alongside Glaciella Wezette has that spear synergy. And the Staff Devout of the Valade. So not only do they have the Ice Water combos, but they have the full job combination cards as well. So those 6 cards are going to be stacked out of their mind. I could see that comp doing very, very well, performing very good. And a couple of other units here that I just want to shout out as I think value picks. Dario Horn. I'm not sure that he has the most synergy on this team with other units, but he's just a very solid tank at 60 cost. I don't think it's the end of the world as long as you can get some agility on him and a couple of key resistances. I think he can do his job. Cecil is an interesting one. I'm excited to see how he uses them. I don't think there's an apparent super synergy with Cecil here, but I like that the ability that he has one unique thing in his kit that nobody else can really do. He can give a 50% 3-hit physical barrier to his other allies, and he starts the fight with one of his own. So I think that can be really cool. Obviously, Red Mage, another Red Mage is Silma, but if they run those two together, who else are you running it with? Probably under 220, so I don't know. It'll be interesting. Summer Elsie, absolutely amazing unit. Proto took Summer Elsie 1 pick before I was going to take him. Hats off to him seeing that value, because Summer Elsie is an absolute stud of a unit. She removes 40 AP from the enemies with her limit break. She heals to full, and it's a guaranteed hit. It is an absolutely busted limit break, and I'm excited to see how he uses her, hopefully not against me. So I think a very good team overall. Ice and water heavy, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. I think he'll be all right. The only thing that I probably would have liked to see from him to make this like an elite draft is I would have liked to see some earth in there somewhere. If you're really heavily invested to ice and water, I look at this roster and I think there's no reason that I can't play lightning into it. There's no earth unit to scare me off. So if I was going to critique it in some way, it would probably be that. But otherwise, I think he did a really solid job in his first season in the WDL drafting, and can't wait to see how he plays. Next up, we have Edoman PR, coach of the 139ers. And if you guys don't know why his team name is that, he always runs his units at level 139. I think this was like an old habit that he had because of arithmeticians having certain skills that are based off your level, like multiplied by a certain number, and didn't want it to be usable on the level 140. And then I think he just got known for it, so then he just runs it all the time now, which is really cool. So I like the name 139ers. As much as I don't like the 49ers in real life, the color scheme matches that perfectly, which I think is pretty dope. So Sodali Cristea is always a terrifying unit. Maces in general just have really good job cards. He has Charm, he has Confusion, I believe. He's just got a lot of good... He's got good statuses, can give re-raise to another person as well as hate to somebody else. He can just make a lot of comps work that wouldn't normally work. You don't necessarily need to have somebody with initial hate. He could run him with somebody like Balo, who only has a little bit of hate, give him more, right? And then now he's off and running. He doesn't even necessarily need to run Taunting Blade. He could run other skills for him. Pair it up with something like Gargus, and now that is a very scary wind damage team with a Balo, who, if you don't have re-raise removal, is really hard to remove. He legitimately, with re-raise, you're gonna have like 28,000 health you got to get through. So I think that comp could be very scary. Book, Katana, Black Mage, all of these classes all have some sort of tie with some of the other ones in terms of job cards, at least with the Katana, Black Mage, and Katana Book, I believe. I think all of them are on the VV card, which can be really strong. And then obviously the elephant in the room, Aloha the Alabaster, 140 cost unit. I mean, she can just deliver the damage, right? Who do you have to pair up with her? I think a couple of really good ones. Drafted Mia, which is a 30 cost unit. Not a ton of apparent like cohesion with Aloha, but it does afford him the ability to run with a Balo or Marguerite or something if they want. So if he wants to just quicken Aloha across the map to try and blow everybody up, he can do that. If he wants to run Balo on the other side of the map while Aloha's on, you know, the opposite side, so Balo takes damage and Aloha just comes in for the kills from the side, he can do that. And he has two other units if he doesn't want to run Mia that can work really well. He's got a Fist and Spear unit. So a lot of those job cards working out very well for him. Alam and Etra. We haven't really seen Etra, I think, ever in the WDL, but we've seen her on a couple of rosters already this season, so I'm excited to see how she does. So he's got a good mix of physical and magic damage here. He's got a couple of physical tanks. The only thing that I will say is a little repetitive is Moraga and Balo are both physical tanks mostly and both earth tanks, so I don't know if he necessarily needed both. I think he probably could have got around not having Moraga and just Balo, but other than that, I think he did a really great job drafting. I think so many different damage types, from Fist to Magic to Slash. He's just got a lot going, to Pierce. He's got basically everything except for Missile. So overall, a good comp. And yeah, I really like it. He's got a magic health shield on Raychez, physical health shield on Lucia. So I don't know. I think his team is pretty unpredictable, and I think that oftentimes can be a real asset to you. Next player is Manta of the Addison Manta Rays, and we've got a football theme going on here. We had Rams colors, Niners colors, earlier in the video Chiefs colors. Well, now we got the Dolphins colors. We got fans of a lot of different football teams, it looks like, but Manta of the guild Gull Wings, who is also Edoman PR's Gull Wings, picking back-to-back from each other. See how he did here. So Glaciella, Flagbearer, River Form, obviously a fantastic unit. She's very bulky, lots of damage, courage removal, very accurate, just a ton of stuff going for her. If you want a totally different kind of damage type, you have Skahal, who obviously can bring the pain. I said this in the champion video. I don't know if he's necessarily a 100 cost tag right now. I think he's probably closer to 90 right now. However, he is getting a limit break upgrade, which is going to be disgusting. It's going to do way more damage than it already does, which means the AI is probably going to prioritize it over Thundaga Disposer, which means it's an instant cast instead of having potential cast time, at least if you're not investing enough into it. And it's basically probably going to heal him to full, if I understand correctly. So keeping that infinite courage up, that limit break is going to be really, really gross. So I think Skahal right now might be worth 90, but once he gets that, could be 110, 120 kind of unit. So I think in the long term, I think it's an excellent pick for him here. Stern Knight of Ruin dropped all the way down to 80 cost, which I think is probably pretty reasonable for him. Looking at the other greatsword options he has, similar to my team, he can run a full greatsword team. It's not going to be 220 cost, but that's okay, and it's really freaking cool, and I still hope to see the double Stern plus Ramada Winter comp come out at some point. Renoa and Aerith, honestly, both excellent supports, both doing their job a little differently. Both have access to haste and heals, but I think Renoa is probably just a better unit in general. The nice thing about Aerith, though, is obviously can synergize with both Skahal and Mish on a lot of those job cards, which can be really useful. She also brings re-raise to the party, magic barrier for the group, so she offers actually a good amount of stuff here. I like the draft overall, but if I think there was anything that I was going to critique about this team is the Glaciella Flagbearer. I do wonder what the composition is that he is going to run with her. Being 120 cost, you have essentially 100 other costs to work with. We don't have a 30 cost unit here, which means Veln and lower are the only units that essentially can work with her. There's no other wind units here. The only fire unit is Mish for an potential Dark Tetra combination. So I'm looking at something like Zazan, whatever you want to say, or Mish alongside probably Velne, I think is the best combo you can have. I do think Veln can do quite a bit of damage. One of the selection quest units who is often forgotten, but she can have over 2k attack. She can get to basically 100 defense pen, so she can do a good amount of damage here. If you have Zazan running distraction, that team might actually be pretty good, but it'll be interesting to see what he does. Other than that, I'm not sure how many comps he has to run with Flagbearer Glassy, and that's really the only big critique that I would have for this team. But there are some style freaking picks on this comp that I think are so damn cool. In terms of just the style points of a team, Veln, Venera Winter, Ramada Winter are all just in Stern Leonis, to be fair, too, or OG Stern. Those are units that we just never freaking see, so I'm really excited to see them in this league, and I hope they perform well as long as it's not against me. Pick number 10 of our draft, guys, is Tempest, coach of the Mace Windows. I'll be completely straight up. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this team. Tempest unfortunately dropped out of the WDL, has quit Wotive overall. Shout out to him. He had some basically things going on in his personal life that were a lot more important than the WDL. So Tempest, if you are watching this, no hard feelings whatsoever. Take care of you, take care of your life, and anybody else who is watching this too. Just remember, if you ever get too involved or too wrapped up in a game or something like that, take care of your real life first. That's always number one, and that's always the most important. So I just wanted to say that right here, that this team did get drafted, but Tempest will not be playing with us, which means the Rundall division will only be 11 players here. So if you see any of the units on this team, and you're wondering why they weren't drafted on another team, if you don't see them this season, it is because the draft did get completed. So obviously units like Winter Rafts, Daewn, stuff like that are not going to be played this season in Rundall, but that's okay. And we're going to go as is with 11 teams. So it should be exciting. We changed up the schedule a little bit, but it shouldn't be a big deal. So I'm looking forward to it. And again, if Tempest, if you're watching this, I wish you nothing but the best. And I hope life's treating you well. And yeah, so let's go on to the next team. Next up here, we have Chisei of the guild Lucis, coach of Hopeless Heroes. One of my absolute favorite people to just talk to about the game in general. He is just an absolutely super positive person, and just an awesome person if you've never met him before. If you guys have watched the WBEL, the Wotive Blind Enthusiast League, it was a league started by Numero 80, but Chisei had a very large hand in helping out with that league, shoutcasting with him every single week during the season. So yeah, if you guys haven't watched that, I encourage you going over to their YouTube channel. I'll try to remember to link it down in the description down here. But he had a big part in that league. It was very cool. And huge shout out to him for helping run that league. It was very awesome. And I got to play in it, which was a lot of fun. So thank you guys for doing that while I was taking a break from the WDL. So now let's roast his team. I'm just kidding. This team is actually very, very good. So I'm probably not going to have much to roast here. Obviously, he chose Bartz, 130 cost unit in our format. Bartz is one of those units that either seems like there's absolutely nothing to stop him whatsoever, or just like a tad bit underwhelming. I've seen in WBE Hell, he seems to be the former most of the time, which is why his cost is so elevated here. Paired up with units like Uni, which Chisei has, Bartz can be really oppressive. You get Uni in there to deny any sort of CT up, haste, quicken, all of that kind of stuff. Super, super long range with Uni. Bartz follow up on top of it. Goodbye at least half of your health bar, if not the whole thing. Bartz hits like an absolute truck. It's very hard to mitigate his damage. pretty much the only ways to mitigate his damage are either to not take damage from the person who first hits you, to have a physical barrier that can negate some of that, or to stack your unit resist through the roof, because he's basically going to penetrate any defense you have, and there's no elemental resistance tied to it. So the damage feels inevitable a lot of times unless you are gearing for it, and if you're gearing all of your stuff to stop Bartz, he's got some other threats here that will take you down. Glassy, Summer, probably the best tank in the entire game. Wrath is very, very good, but if I had to pick one who I think is the absolute best tank, I think it's Summer Glassy. She has a guaranteed hit in her kit. She has a way to stop enemy units, which is extremely good value for a tank. She deals respectable damage, and she takes so damn long to die. She's just a very good unit, and paired up with something like Victoria and Uni with that Ice Water synergy, I think could be very, very strong here. He's got some really interesting staff devout options here. He's got Helena the Black Robe Witch, he's got Kilfay, he's got Shells Ovis, and then he's got Little Leela as well. So I'm curious to see if he runs something like Helena, Shells, and Little Leela as like an anti-magic team. That could be interesting to watch. Victoria and Elda obviously have Spear synergy along with those other staff devout options. Yeah, I'm saying the praises of those two jobs, that, you know, how well they intertwine with each other. But man, it's going to be interesting. Glassy Summer can tank honestly every kind of damage, but physically very, very well. And Little Leela is going to deny your magic units with that 67% silence chance. Mont, again, is another good physical tank, so he's got a low-cost tank option for both physical and magic. I think the team is very, very good. Right now, I don't think it's game-breaking. I think right now, Bartz is definitely the strongest thing he's got going for himself. However, Helena the Black Robe Witch is going to get hooked up with a really nice limit break upgrade. When that happens, I think she is going to take a step up and is probably worth more than 80 costs. The limit break upgrade is basically going to do more damage. It's going to offer like a heal back to one of her other units, kind of similar to what Helena the Black Rose, the light option, does. And then it also is going to, I think, nerf crit rate, I want to say, on one of the enemies. Overall, a very good upgrade, and it'll be interesting. I think in terms of damage types, or damage overall, I do think this team is a little low in general, but I think once he gets that Helena upgrade, it could take a step forward in an upgrade. So the team feels slightly more on the side of Bartz or bust, but I know Chisei is a super good player and is going to get every single bit of these units that he can. So excited to see him. Again, huge shout out to Chisei, awesome person. Let's check out the next team. Final roster of the Rundall division, we have Sweetheart, formerly known as Iceheart in the last season. I know she had kind of like switched between Iceheart and Sweetheart along the way in terms of her name, so I didn't know what to call her, but we're going with Sweetheart the whole time this season. In the first round, she had back-to-back picks. She ended up taking Starlight, Elena, and Sylvie together. So a couple of light units, a couple of red mage units. Obviously, those two units can pair very well together. Sylvie just recently got her upgrade, so I think that could be very good for her. And then you can pair alongside something like either Wezette or Lorela with those two units. I think Lorela just doing some damage from the back nice and safely while Starlight Elena tries to go forward, evade some stuff, catch a heal and a shield from Sylvie. I think that team could work. And I like the fact that she has 3 different 40 cost options, because she has the 140 cost Soul, who she grabbed almost at the end of the draft. So this guy was hanging around basically the entire time, and she just came in and swooped him up. I think a very smart way to go here. Wezette is on the Edward Elric card with Soul, if she decides to run that. It won't catch either O or Lorela there, so not perfect synergy, but overall pretty decent, I would say. Reagan, Miranda are obviously extra red mage users as well. If there was a 40 cost red mage unit or something like that here, I know Murmur was in the past. I don't know if there is a 40 cost red mage unit. If she had one, man, this team would be wild, and I would like it a whole awful lot. I do think it's decent, but I don't think she has those perfect 3 unit pairings all the way down. It feels like Starlight, Elena, and Sylvie are an amazing combo. Reagan and Miranda are an amazing combo. But you look at some of the third units, like Soul and Wezette could be very good. but I don't always see the third unit that goes well with him. So that would be the critique of the team if I had one to say. I do think she's got some very good units, but that's my biggest issue with it. If I have an issue, is just, what is that third unit? How does that pair? So overall, I hope she does well. I know she is an excellent player. She showed that in the WBEL, where she got, I think, either second or third in the regular season, made it to the playoffs in that league. She didn't do very well last season in the WDL, but I think she was just kind of getting her footing with the whole draft aspect of something kind of new. I do think she did better this season than she did last time. Last time was very, very missile heavy, where this time she does have some different damage types. She has magic, she has slash, she has strike, she has pierce. I guess she doesn't have pierce, but she has 3 different damage types, which I think is plenty. So overall, I think she did a decent job. As long as she can get some value out of some of those 40 cost units, I think she will do well. I think that's the biggest question for her, is can those 40 cost units put in work? If they can, I think she will do very well. Starting off the Wezette League here, we have Mao with the first overall pick of the guild Lucis and coach of Nora's gang. Starting at the top of the table here, he's got Howlet, the Heaven's Blade, who is an excellent magic DPS. However, I will scan the team here and say that I don't think there's a ton of apparent synergies alongside him that he can pair it up with. There's no water units on the table or anything like that. Obviously, he does have some ice, but he can't play with snow because he doesn't have a 40 cost unit. So if he pairs with something like Curry, he's got to also be with one of those 50 or 60 cost units. So starting off, that's probably the stuff that I don't like about the draft. I would have loved to have seen a 70 cost unit on the board here for his roster, but aside from that, there are quite a few things that I do like about the roster. Just speaking specifically about the unit Little Leela, I think she is excellent. Her guaranteed hit, 67% chance to silence, just absolutely obliterates magic damage dealers if they can't resist it, which silence can often be a status that is hard to resist. That can be absolutely crippling. The thing I like about that is you can pair it alongside somebody like a Lucia Halloween, who is very good against physical damage, but not at all good against magic damage. And now you can pair alongside with something like Murmur, or even Curry in the back to drop damage from the back line and frostbite somebody. So you got Curry frostbiting people. That helps against the physical damage dealers. Little Leela silencing helps against the magic damage dealers, and you have Lucia Halloween kind of cleaning up. Obviously, the Fist synergy is right there with Snow, Urel, and Mariluk. I do think that composition could be very, very lethal. And would he ever consider going double tank with Little Leela and Whisper? We've actually seen Whisper can kind of be built like a bruiser in a sense, alongside Howlet the Heaven's Blade. They're not on all the same cards is the one problem with that, though. They're all different sword cards. So overall, I think it's a decent draft. I wouldn't say it's like top tier, but I think it's decent. The one thing that just sticks out to me, like I said, is I would have loved to have seen 170 cost unit here, because if you're playing Howlet the Heaven's Blade, you essentially have to run one of the 50s, or you have to run Little Leela Whisper. And if you're running one of the 50s, Snow, Locke, Urel, and Lucia Halloween are all off the table. So it just feels like with Howlet the Heaven's Blade, I don't know if he's going to get the full value of that unit that he could have in a different circumstance. But that being said, I think he has a number of low-cost units that are actually really strong for their costs. So we'll see how he can pair things together. I do, like I said, I think he gets a lot of run out of the Fist comp, and I think Lucia Halloween and Little Leela are an excellent combo. So if I had to guess, those are probably the two things that he'll go with the most, but we'll see how he plays. Second pick of this division is Alcor, also of the Guild Lucis, and coach of Royally Funked. And absolutely love this team. I love a lot of the units. But before I break it down, I just want to give a huge shout out to Alcor. He is actually the grand champion of the Season 1 of WBEL. Ended up taking down Jesus LBL in a 5-game series. I hope that's not too spoilery for anybody who hasn't seen it, but shout out to him. He did an absolutely amazing job with his team over there and performed really well. So I just wanted to give him a shout out for winning that competition. Very, very cool to see. Looking at this roster, though, man, he's got 2 100 cost units of different elements who are very bulky, at least against their respective damage types. Summer Glassy's bulky against almost everything, but Winter Wrath is just so ridiculous versus magic damage. I think both of these units are excellent 100 cost values on their own, but I absolutely love some of the stuff that he has done to pair these units together here. So just talking about one very apparent one. Alaya Rundall, 90 cost gunner unit, and Tyrell, 30 cost sword knight. I have been on the record saying that I think Tyrell is the best 30 cost unit of this season. These two together is such a just huge brain mix by Alcor. Alaya Rundall, Tyrell, and Summer Glassy are all the ice water units, so they can mesh very well in a comp together. Alaya, Tyrell, and Winter Wrath can also play together. All three of those are on the Melnia VC, which gives agility and unit attack resist. Mace, Gun, and Sword Knight are all there. So those two together, pair them alongside like a Winter Holiday Party on Winter Wrath or something like that, and then you have a third card to play with. I like that combination a lot. I think that team could be very good. So I love the fact that this 90 cost ice unit is specifically Alaya Rundall and the 30 cost is Tyrell. I think it allows him to play those two units with either 100 cost very, very easily. And I think that was very smart by him. Noctis is also of the Sword Knight group, so if you don't want to run Alaya, or if you don't want to run one of those 100 cost units, you can mix him in there as well in that comp. Mashri Horn is also on that card. Glaciella Regalia is also on that card. And Lucia. So you can see almost his entire team is on that card. So there was a very specific theme that I think he was going for with these, is to play off of that Melnia VC. And shout out to Ramada Winter, one of the units who helped him win the WBEL championship, alongside Old Doa too. So even though he's got a bunch of units that I think just have amazing synergy off the Melnia card, he's got a couple of really spicy picks on the low cost options too, which I think is really cool to see. As the 40 cost Durando, I'm not sure how much run he's going to get out of that. I don't see that coming out a ton unless he wants to run a water and earth comp with Noctis Durando covering for Summer Glassy. That is something that he could run. But yeah, he's got a lot of different damage types. Summer Glassy, so he's got Slash, he's got Pierce with Winter Wrath, he's got Missile, he's got Magic. I mean, he has basically everything except Strike, and even technically Durando has Monk Subjob. So a lot of different damage types, both physical and magical. Good synergies. Overall, I think this is a banger team, and I expect Alcor to do very well this season. The next pick in the draft is Greatestness, who was in the Wezette division last season as his first season in the WDL, and he is of the team Elite. I believe that was actually the name of his old guild, so maybe that was a shout out to that, but he is now of the guild Overdose, and I like this comp a lot. So he has one team specifically that I think is bananas and is also after my heart. It is a team that is also on Maverick's roster in the Champions division. Lucio Halloween, Grifford, and Cyrell. I think that axe composition is absolutely lethal. When you are going against a physical team, especially if they don't have barrier break, good frickin' luck. There's two units with 7,500 physical health shields on it. Cyrell starts the battle with a one-hit shield against any kind of damage type. So you better have barrier breaks to beat that team, and you're going to have to be accurate too, because Lucio Halloween is very dodgy. They can slash chain with each other. The card synergies are there. Overall, I think just an excellent team. The other thing that he did, which I like quite a bit actually, is with Lucio Halloween paired up with two different Earth units. So Lucio Halloween in general is just a better unit when you're able to run on an Earth comp. So running something like Renoa or Oberon Heindler allows him to run some of those Earth cards, gives himself more slash penetration, which really can increase his damage. Another shout out that I'll give here is that Renoa, being a glove user, glove is actually on multiple of the cards with the axe users. They're on two different agility cards, and I believe they're also on an AoE resist card with them. So Renoa has very good synergy with Cyrell and either Grifford or Lucio Halloween. So I really like that combination that he did. And talking about just ice water comps, Grifford, Glaciella, Freyevia, Reagan, Zazan, they're all there for a couple of different combinations that he can throw together. I think very well done. And honestly, he got a huge little present here. During his draft, he didn't know that Freyevia was going to get her limit break upgrade, but that limit break upgrade is lethal. It is very, very good. And I would not be surprised to see him put in some work with it. So overall, Greatestness second draft in the WDL. I don't know, man. This draft, I just don't see a lot of weaknesses. I think it's incredible. Oberon Heindler alongside Glaciella and either Alim or Sosha is undercosted. It's not 220, but that's a very good comp too with full spear units. so I like that a lot. Oberon and Glaciella both catching massive limit break upgrades. I mean, this dude's whole roster is basically getting upgraded right now, so very, very well done by Greatestness. He's got full cold triangle and a lot of different damage types, a lot of different good job synergies, and I just like it a lot. I think this is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, that I've seen in this division so far. Next up to bat, we have Shadow91. I hope I say this right, Vanergand. I don't know what that is from. I'm sorry if I'm not catching a reference, but he's of the guild Lionheart. He's got none other than Helen of the Black Rose, the 140 cost unit. She is an absolute monster. And anytime I see 140, I say, who can you pair it with? So no matter what, he only has one composition that he can run with Helena and still be in the cost limit. It is with Krace and it is with Uni. So he's got not necessarily Black Mage synergy there, but he's got double range damage dealers who can do some weird stuff with CT. Krace is able to give herself some CT when she crits. Uni is able to shut down Keenblades, haste, quicken, and stuff like that on the other side. So we'll see if that comp works out. Like I said, the job VC stuff is not there for that comp, but Helen is so good, she might just be able to carry it anyway. We'll have to see. He's got some different bow options. He's got Rosa, got Uni, and Eliza. I don't know how strong the bow cards are overall, but would love to see just a bow comp come out. Missile units that can hit on pretty much any map because of their arcane projectiles, so that's kind of cool. Obviously would be undercosted at 180, but it's spicy and I would love to still see it regardless. Has some great sword units that he can pair well together with Joom and Elsarel, obviously making up 160 of that cost. One little cool thing that helps him out here is the Raid VC that just came out this week. It has Axe and Greatsword on it alongside Black Mage. AoE resist, 30% attack, a little bit of HP just as a kicker. It's an MR card, but honestly it's very, very good for an MR card, which allows him to run Joom, Elsarel, and Summer Killfay all together. Wouldn't be surprised to see that comp come out. If he doesn't want to run something like Elsarel, he could also run Lemure in their place. So if you want to run Joom, Summer Killfay, Lemure, you could do that. And honestly, you can run Lemure with just a couple of missile units trying to hit from far away, like Eliza and Rosa or something like that. If you want to just haste them up and try and kill people from across the map, you could do that. There's some good stuff here. I like some of the combinations that he's got. I'm looking across the team. It does feel a little light on damage, aside from Helen of the Black Rose. Elsarel can definitely put down the pain. Summer Killfay can deal damage. But I'm looking at units like Joom, Elsra, Rosa, Krace, Uni, Shell, Lemure. Those are all very supportive options, not very high on damage. So if there was any one thing that I have to kind of call out on the roster, I think it's a little low on damage. But one thing that Shadow loves to do is he loves to just get weird with it. He loves to throw different combinations at the other person. He's very unpredictable in that manner, which I think is really cool. And he has a roster like that you're looking and you're like, what is he going to play? I have no idea. So I think that is really cool. He does technically have double quicken that he could run with somebody else. It would have to be, actually it could be anybody but Helen of the Black Rose, to be fair. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a double quicken comp come out from Shadow at some point. I think he's a great player and he likes to get interesting with it. So I can't wait to see what he brings out this season. Speaking of getting interesting with it, we have Tayo of the guild Thunder Gods, my guild, coach of Witch of the Empire. And I will say, Tayo didn't win a series last season, but he won 5 or 6 different games in a series. And I think he was the fan favorite in terms of who to watch. And it was mainly because of this chick right here in the middle, Terra. Tayo, it was I'm sure he wasn't the creator, but he's the first person that I've seen literally intentionally run Summon or Esper Tech in auto battle. He runs TMRs, Terra's abilities, all that kind of stuff to basically enhance the Esper gauge as quickly as humanly possible. This dude was summoning Phoenix on the second turn last season, which was just so damn cool to see. I can't wait to see him do that again. Looking at his roster, he did one thing very similar to last season, and that was draft a bunch of fire units. However, I think his fire units are way better this time than they were last time. Yuffie and Pizarro are definitely a deadly duo here. They can pair well together in terms of an evasion build. You could have somebody like Katia in the back healing them up if they ever do take a hit. Not that they're going to live too many hits. They're kind of squishy. They're just really dodgy. But you could have somebody like 9S in the back as well supporting them in some fashion. So curious to see how he pairs those two up. But I think those two as an evasion combo are very, very deadly. Could see somebody like Skahal coming out with a Kadia support in the back, trying to heal him up, alongside maybe just Terra doing some extra damage, or maybe Mariel trying to be a tank while Skahal is just like the solo DPS. I do like the Mont King of Leonis just for any sort of berserk strategies. You always have to keep that in mind when facing off against him. And he's got, unfortunately, just over cost. I would have loved this full Sword Warrior comp with a bunch of status effects, Mont King of Leonis, Mariel, Psaro, but he can't quite run that. It's 230. But that being said, Taio's roster last season, I'm going to be completely honest, was the weakest of anyone in the WDL. I really do genuinely believe that. He only had fire and light units. He only had 2 elements, and they were a lot of the older units. I think Terra was his first pick this season. But to be honest, like this team is actually better than he did last season, and he won like 5 games. He never won a series, but he won like 5 games. So I can't wait to see what he brings, and I think this phrase sums up Taio more than anybody. Let him cook. Just let him cook. So I can't wait to see what he brings out. I know he is having massive issues with logging in the game. He hasn't been able to log in like 2 weeks. So I'm praying, Gumi, please friggin' fix all your shit so that we can see Taio play, because he is a joy to watch. Please fix it. But shout out to him. Awesome player and awesome dude. Let's check out the next team. Next up, we have Gorokin of the guild Get Swifty with Bag O' Cats. I love the team. It's very spicy. A lot of interesting angles here. I don't even know really where to start breaking this team down here. So I look at this comp and I'm immediately like, what the hell is he running? I have no idea. And I always like when I can say that about a team. It just makes you less predictable. He's got Dialdo as a spear unit, he's got McLeod as a spear unit, and Luarth of Winter as a spear unit. So that is the one comp that just absolutely like shouts out to me like, hey, he's going to run this. Then he's got Miranda, Lucio, Orlando as a full red mage comp. So as much as I said he seems unpredictable, maybe he's not. Maybe he's going to mostly run those 2 compositions. Those are 2 very solid ones, I think. But in terms of like Gargus, I think he's just a major DPS. He's very, very effective. You could run him alongside either Solir or Severo with Dialdo tanking. And I honestly think Gargus and Severo, or Gargus and Solir, are good enough damage dealers that you don't need a big other damage dealer with them. If you have Dialdo tanking up hits, I think you could pull that off and do you could do a lot worse. I'll say that. Luel and Gargus obviously have synergy on that VV card, like I have mentioned before. At least I'm 99% sure that they are both on that card. So yeah, some interesting stuff here. In terms of the... I would have liked to see maybe like one more ice or water unit so that he could pair like McLeod and Miranda, or Miranda and Severo a little better. But there is Dark Shiva out there that can help out Dialdo, Miranda, Severo as an angle too. So he's got some interesting stuff here. I can't wait to see how he uses this. I do think he's actually fairly unpredictable, even though he has 2 very clear job comps. And I'm excited to see how he uses some of the other units that don't necessarily fall into those jobs, like an Engelbert or Luel or Gargus or something like that. So I'm excited to see how he does. Great player. This is his 2nd season, and let's check out the next team. Pick number 7 of the Wezette League is Dervis of the guild Solaris, which he has been a member of since day 1, apparently. Coach of Section 9 here. And if you don't know who Dervis is, he is a longtime Friday Night Fights player back when Orange A used to host. He was pretty much a weekly player, but is a first-timer to the WDL, so I'm excited to see how he does this season. So, a couple of units that I'm going to shout out right away here. Starlight Elena. He's got 3 different 80 cost units that he can run with her alongside Wezette, and then 2 70 cost units he can run side along Agrias. Aside from that, I guess I'm just a little concerned about the way that he has his cost structured. He has 3 80s and 2 70s, and the 2 70s that he has are a support and a tank. So I'm a little worried about how he can pair some of those units alongside each other. If he's going to use 2 80s together, maybe alongside Agrias, I think that could potentially work. But I don't know. I don't see a ton of obvious synergies between some of the units. Renan and Shells Ovis obviously have a great pairing there with the Staff Devout role. And you can pair them alongside Agrias with the tank support damage dealer. But I think he's just... I don't know what it is. Something's just a little lacking in terms of the way he can pair some of those units together. I hope that he has something up his sleeve that I just don't see, but I'm just a little worried about that right now, just the way that some of the costs are structured. That being said, he has some units that I think are great values for their cost. I think Astrius is great value at 90. I think Rugia is great value at 80. And I think Agrius is a phenomenal value at 50. So maybe his thought process is just like, I'm going to pick units that I think are good for their cost, and I'll figure out ways to pair them. That very well may be his strategy. And if that's the case, then, you know, hats off to him for going for that. So I do think the Starlight Elena and Sylvie pairing are a fantastic pairing. The only issue is that you have to run them with Wezette to make it work. So we'll see how he does. I know that he's a great player, so would not be surprised if he thrives with this roster, even if I don't think that it's like a top tier roster. So excited to see how he does, and good luck. Next up to bat is Meeple of the guild Epidemic, coach of Lightning Warriors, after my heart with the Lightning theme here. Also a member of the YouTube channel, so shout out to him for that. Looking at the roster here, with Lightning, just looking at some of the pairs well, obviously with Ravi's on both an elemental and a job level. Putting those two together leaves you at 150 cost, which means you can pair them up with either More the Merrier Ketone or Ildira or any one of those lower cost units there. I think this could be a decent pairing. I do think Lightning is a unit that some people kind of overlook. Sword Knight in general has received multiple cards that really amplify Lightning's follow-up damage. It's so much better now than it used to be, because that attack is really only amplified by things like Maneater or crit damage, and Sword Knight has received multiple cards that amplify that up, so would not be surprised to see Lightning follow-ups dealing quite a bit of damage. I know Bart's is the new hotness in terms of follow-ups, but Lightning can pack a punch on that as well. Also got a nice little evasion squad with the Zazan, the Unkillable, and Ketone together. Now with both of them being lower cost than they used to be, puts you at 150. It allows you to run something else like an Ildira in the back to maybe support them. That could be really dangerous. Zazan the Unkillable with his courage and re-raise, Ketone with her permanent courage. If Ildira heals her back up to full, now you have to kill her another time. I could see that being an interesting combination along with that Dark Siren potential pairing there. So I think that one is pretty cool. Glaciella Flagbearer of Reform is obviously the staple unit on this team. 120 cost, so I was trying to see, you know, what can you pair with Glaciella Flagbearer. So there's no 30 cost unit, which means all the 70s are off the board in terms of pairing with her. But you can either go like Liarte Ravis if you just want a little bit of utility and then an extra tank. I think the more likely option, though, is probably something like Ramada, who's going to be on a lot of those cards with Flag Glassy, and then either something like Silma or Moore. Moore could put like a Calamity Guard on people, though I don't think you want to do that because Glaciella is going to use her own barrier. So I think, honestly, Silma's probably the most likely. Giving a fast cast to try and speed up Glassy and just make her a super version of herself, I think is probably the most likely way that he goes with it. But overall, some good stuff here. An evasion team, a good little Lightning Sword Knight composition. I think it's a decent team for his first overall draft, and I'm excited to see how he uses it. Next up to bat, we have Hisoka, a final boss and coach of Eggplant Brigade. If you know Hisoka in Discord, he's basically got an eggplant emoji on his username pretty much always, so I had to hit him with those eggplant colors for his team here. And shout out to him. He's the only other player besides me who drafted Vega in any league, so he's already after my heart in that regard for that one. And has another couple of other units who are high cost, really good units. Ferris can just get AoE resistance that is out of this world. It is not weird to see Ferris with over 80 unit resist just walking into the fight. She is an absolutely stellar unit. And obviously you have somebody like Soul, who can be extremely hard to bring down, gives healing to himself and other people, big physical health shield, just an absolute monster of a unit. Again, when you have a 140, you gotta look, who can you pair him alongside with? Obviously, Mia is there. Whenever you have a 140, I like to see a 30 just because it opens up possibilities of who you could run them with. We've seen some different rosters where they have a 140 cost unit, and there's only one team comp that they can run with them, which I think kind of limits their potential a little bit because you at least know what you would see if they come with. With Mia here, it opens up the possibility of having Balo as a tank or Helena as a traditional support. You can also just run with something like Surges and O alongside them. So the Surges is obviously a no-brainer in terms of the Spear Devout synergy, although O and Mia are probably not quite as clear of a synergy there. Something like Kane obviously would pair well with Surges, but there's not really a third unit up at the top that goes well with them. I would have loved to see if he could somehow pull Cyrell in this draft. Obviously wasn't able to do that to get a full axe comp, but I do like the double axe comp and Balo, who can be on that agility card with them. So Yerma, we've already seen, can do an insane amount of damage. She can get a decent amount of AoE resist, so I actually do like that pairing with Balo and Viga. She should be able to take a couple of hits and just nuke the hell out of somebody while Balo takes damage. So I definitely like that. And Summer Elsie, I think, is just a great unit. I've said it before. Her limit break is very, very strong. She is very bulky versus physical teams. I think just an overall great unit. So I think he's got some different options here. He's pretty heavy on his high-cost units. That being said, he still managed to draft 11 units overall, which I think is impressive when you have 2 100s and a 140 on your roster. So shout out to Ahsoka. I think he did a really nice job with his draft this season. Next up, speaking of some good high-cost units, we've got Nemo of the guild Mako, coach of Lion's Guard. We've got Bartz at 130, Raph at 100, and Kefka at 100. And I like this because his high-cost units all do very different things. Bartz is a very big, even though he can hit a huge AoE, you need a lot of unit resist to try and resist his follow-up damage, which he does have Mustadio for some extended range attacks to try and deal that follow-up alongside something like either Mont, Camilo, Titus, or Grace can really use any one of those 4 units. I would not be surprised at all to see Mont Leonis with that Sword Warrior pairing and the Mustadio just to deliver some of those follow-up techs for him. He's got Raph as an excellent tank who can pair up probably with something like Sakura. Could use actually some of that like Dark Odin synergy with Sakura and Camilo. I don't think that would be too bad, getting that AoE resist card on everybody. Obviously they don't really take advantage of the slash attack there, but it is just a nice card in terms of an overall stat stick and extended increased agility and unit resist for the light unit, especially holding it. Kefka is an absolute monster of a unit, though I'm not entirely sure who he plans on pairing him up with. I mean, he's a stud by himself, so even if you just get somebody to tank and maybe have Resnick healing up, Kefka can do enough damage to be kind of the solo carry of the team. But looking at some of the lower cost units, some of them, I'm not sure the pairings are just, absolutely phenomenal with his high cost units, but I do like that his 3 top units all do very different things. I think that is a smart angle by him. His low-cost units all do different things as well, which I like. I like it when I see that and not seeing, the same type of unit over and over again. He's got Grace as a really good healer, who I think is actually quite underrated at 50 cost. She gets some really good upgrades, and I think she's pretty legit. I'm not sure why he went with both Titus and Mont, other than the fact of just having maybe like card synergy with things like Mont obviously being with Bartz, Titus with being with Raph, but I don't know if you need Titus with Raph. If Raph is tank, do you also need Titus? So I don't know. Curious to see that, but I think he did a decent job. I don't think it's like a top tier team, but I certainly don't think he did a poor job either. So excited to see how Nemo does with this roster. It'll be a good one. All right, checking out this next team, we have Isbar of the guild Hokutin, coach of Elda's Angels, another player who was in the WBEL, but first time in the WDL. He did very nice in the other league. He did very, very well for himself with his mascot unit, Elda, King of the Lions, excuse me. Got a couple of really nice pairings actually that he can do here. If he wants to run a tank alongside him, he can run the double Elda comp. And I will say Isvar's Elda is built different. I won't say too much about it to reveal anything for him, but he is a huge Elda Leonis player, and I'm talking about the original Elda. I would not be surprised to see him pair double Elda alongside something like a Mish to make that happen. But if he doesn't feel like running a separate tank, he could easily run something like Lorenzo and Mashri Winter, or if he wants to support, you can run Valade with one of those and Elda. I think that's a very nice setup by him. Spear and Staff Devout just have excellent synergies, and he's got so many damn Pierce units on this team. It's kind of wild. He can run Jaden the Celebrated, Victoria, and Elda. And the more and more I look at this team, other than 3 units, they're all Spear or Staff Devout. So he's very clearly trying to work off the Edward Elric card and the Elda King of the Lions card. Those are 2 excellent cards to run off of, and I love the synergy that he has amongst these units. My one concern would be, if you stack Pierce resistance against Isvar, if he doesn't bring Bradley, I don't know how he's going to do. I don't think he's going to do very well in that situation. So I think that's probably why he has King Bradley, because if you're just stacking Pierce resistance against King Bradley, he's going to just absolutely nuke you and destroy you. So probably smart by him grabbing him as another really great 120 cost unit, who can also pair well with Lorenzo and Valade. Now that I think about it, those 2 units pair excellently with both Elda and King Bradley due to the Dark Golem synergy, just having an extra earth damage dealer and Valade to heal from the back. Another really great call by him. So I actually love when coaches or managers, whatever you want to call them, are able to do this, take their 2 high cost options and have them sync really well with some of the lower cost options. I shouted out Alcor earlier for doing that same thing, but I think he did a really nice job with that for sure. And I do also like the fact that he grabbed Y'shtola just as a 30 cost unit, even though I don't think Y'shtola is anything to write home about. Just having the 30 allows you to play King Bradley with one of those 70 cost units, or allows you Elda to run with one of those 70 cost units. So I like the team a lot. There's a ton of stuff I like. Like I said, I'm just concerned that if he wants to run Pierce units and you stack a ton of Pierce res, I don't know how he's going to do. So that would be my one question, but otherwise, absolutely love it. Let's check out the next team. The next team up here is Meraxis of the Thunder Gods, another YouTube member and another Thunder God member. We've got a lot more coming in from the guild this season, which I'm excited about. Coach of Bento Box Bullies, and rocking that Tifa on the home screen here, alongside an Edward Elric and an Etra, will make a nice little fist composition. You also could throw in Revelka there if you wanted to, as like a Dark Tetra synergy. I could see that being very strong. So I think we will see Tifa at some point, considering she is the mascot unit here. Also got some good Cold Triangle stuff going on with the Velis, Celis. There's Ravi's Winter. So you can run Celis and Velis together, which used to be a thing back in the day, alongside Raphael if you want. If you don't want to do that, obviously, you can summon Winter Ravis for one of those 80 cost units. I do like that overall. Tifa and Raldor pairing up together as those 2 fist units. I'm not entirely sure when you would use them together, actually. It might be more likely that instead of Tifa, you sub in Raldor alongside, Revelka and Edward. I think that could be a very strong composition as well. It's actually very smart of him to draft Raldor here to kind of block for a potential ice pick into Edward. Revelka and Raldor very much shield him quite well against ice threats, so I do like a lot about what Meraxis did there. Charlotte is just an absolutely excellent magic tank. I will say that is a little bit of like redundancy alongside Celis. I don't know if you need 2 excellent magic tanks in those mid-cost tiers, but obviously they're going to pair, differently depending on who you use them with. And I think just like the more I think about it, I don't know that Charlotte is necessarily necessary here. I think Celis, fits a lot of what he's trying to do, and I might be missing something very clear. But I'm not sure where the Charlotte falls into play. So if there's anything about the comp that I don't feel good about or I'm not sure about, it's probably just Charlotte, which is ironic because I fucking love that unit. And I'm sorry for dropping the F-bomb, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just not sure where she falls into place. But other than that, like it a lot. Like the cold triangle stuff. I like even the warm triangle stuff. He avoided dark and light. He's going with all the other elements, which I do respect him for. So yeah, it's very, very cool to see. Good luck to Meraxis, fellow guildmate, YouTube member, awesome dude, and I'm excited to see him crush some face with Tifa. Well, guys, that is the final roster of the promotional leagues. We went through 35 different teams, not including, the one that dropped out, obviously. So a bunch of teams that we looked at today. I think a number of really good rosters, some not as great. When I do this, I'm normally so ridiculously positive about every team. I hope I don't hurt any feelings if I say anything negative. I'm trying to be more objective. in my analysis, because I want to be real about how I feel about these teams. Not every team is amazing, and that's okay. And I think I want to try and be honest about that when I review things. I think I'm still pretty positive when I go about this stuff, but when I see a flaw or see a critique, I try to see if I can point it out and, you know, see how people can improve. So I'm excited as hell about this season, you guys. You know, 4 different divisions. We expanded to 12 teams instead of 10. There's going to be more people playing. Obviously, going to the best of 1 is going to be a change, but I think it's going to be a nice thing for me to kind of save me from burnout, from not having to cast quite as many matches. But I'm really, really excited for it. I think there's going to be some new stuff that you guys will see that is going to be really cool. And I'm pumped. I'm just really pumped for it overall. Can't wait for the season to start. And basically what you can expect from me. So this video in Central or Eastern time is going to be released on January 20th. And you can expect probably the first battle video to come out probably 4 days after that, if I had to guess. All of the first week's battle videos are going to be due by the 21st, which means me filming and editing, give me, you know, 2-3 days, something like that. I expect probably by the 24th. It could be sooner. Could be sooner. I won't guarantee that. But first week should be right around there. And I do plan on, I think my goal is to release 1 video per day. I don't like doing the 2 videos per day personally. With the 4 divisions, I would like to try and have a video come out every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's kind of my goal at this moment, so kind of what you guys can expect. But yeah, overall, really, really looking forward to it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like down below. Comment down below who you think I either underrated or overrated in terms of the team. I'm sure I missed a number of things. A lot of the people who probably drafted this roster are like, you forgot to mention this about my roster. But when you look at 48 different teams and try and talk about them, you're going to miss some stuff. So I do apologize for that. But anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Look forward to week 1 videos. They should be coming out soon. Have a great day.